Jim would do anything for Duke, and I think Duke would do anything for Jim. But they had a mutual understanding with each other from the time they were little boys. I think anybody that can live as long as those two gentlemen have and never had a crossword, it says a lot for both of them.
For whatever reason, the chemistry between Duke and me has always been very, very good. We were brothers, we were friends, we did a lot of stuff together, we played a lot of ball together, used to go out at night, go to movies, go to the bars and stuff. We always had a pretty good relationship, and it's continued, all our lives.
Jim is an extremely nice person, very intelligent, very caring, and we get along great.
They're good friends. They get along well.
They both respected each other's ability. Always laughing, always proud of their kids, proud of their homes, proud of their wives, proud of their achievements, proud of each other.
This is the story of Jim and Duke Keene. To know Jim and Duke, one needs to know Herb and Loretta Keene, their parents. In the 1930s and 1940s, when their boys were growing up in De Pere, Wisconsin, Herb and Loretta Keene were becoming two of De Pere's most beloved citizens. But the earlier years had been far different. Herb Keene was the second child of 11. His father, a contractor, became an invalid early on. Without Social Security, still many years away, the family lived in poverty.
At times they had to live on charity. My dad had jobs as a small kid taking care of the chickens and the cows. And they had to do things like that to live. They used to go down the railroad tracks and pick coal up for the fire. And at Christmas time and other times, people would bring food over to us, and not to us, to them. And that had an enormous impact on my father. I think it scarred him for life. He was determined never, ever to be poor. And he worked incredibly hard. And he was very, shall we say, frugal.
Graduating as valedictorian of St. Mary's Elementary School in 1912, Herb's formal education was apparently finished. The next step, college, was too expensive for the family to even consider. But the local Catholic priests of St. Norbert College knew of Herb's abilities and family situation. They took him in without tuition, in night courses as a commercial student, and the world of business began to open itself to Herb Keene. The later 1910s were the first years of America's and De Pere's obsession with the automobile. A Brown County pioneer in this newly forming industry was Grove McGeehan's Broadway Garage, located at 125 South Broadway in East De Pere. In 1917, Herb Keene started as bookkeeper and all around everything else for $7 a week.
My father started in the automobile business in 1916, and throughout the years, they had Buick, the Epperson Jackrabbit, the Maxwell, Buick, and Dad ended up buying the business when Grove McGeehan died in 1932, I think, and at that time it was Chevrolet and Oldsmobile.
The most dedicated, hardest working guy that I have ever known personally. He was in the wrong business, but he would have been a success in any business because he was so determined to be good.
The years with Grove McGeehan were good for Herb Keene. In 1920, he bought his first partial interest in the dealership, became general manager, and built a brand new building, considered one of the most modern north of Milwaukee, at a new location, 203 North Broadway, just a couple of blocks up the street. In 1925, Herb married the woman who would be his devoted wife for the next 50 years, Loretta Garvey.
She was an Irishman. She'd like to say she was from County Cork, but not quite. You know, she was born in Kaukauna. She went to work for the railroad and started going to a place on the river. It was a place where you could go to dance, Bridgepoint, and that's where she met my father. And they courted, you know, in relatively long distance. In those days, that was a long way. My dad worked very, very hard, as we all know, and their typical date would, Mother would take the streetcar down here and wait at the dealership for Dad to drive her home. That's pretty much how they courted. She was obviously a very patient lady and obviously very enthralled with my father. Very sweet, gentle lady, very sweet.
On June 14, 1927, their first child, James Robert. 2 years later, on June 19, 1929, another son, Duke, who would be christened Herbert John. The Keene boys, Jim and Duke, brothers. Just a few short blocks from the new dealership, 703 Wisconsin Street was the boys' first home. But in 1937, the family built and moved into 1000 South Broadway, Herb and Loretta's dream home. Although now renamed as 1000 South Fox River Drive, and now Jim's house and a few renovations and additions later, this house on the banks of the beautiful Fox River became the boys' playground.
The house we grew up in was on the river, and we had a lot of friends around by us that we could play with and so on. We used to go swimming in the summertime just about every day in the river. At that time, it was, they were just calling it polluted at that time. But during the summertime, you used to have what they'd call dog days, and you'd have the algae coming up on the top of the river, and you would have to use your hands to clear an area when you wanted to come up. If you dove in, you went like this on the water so you could get up without getting all full of green stuff.
Jim and Duke's first love was always sports, of any kind.
I played football and basketball and boxed in grade school. In high school, I played football and I played basketball my first 2 years.
The Right Reverend Raymond Hippus, he was the assistant pastor at St. Mary's when I was just a little guy growing up. And I really was that 92-pound weakling that you read about. I was well on my way to becoming the kind of person I don't think I would have liked, what some people would refer to as a nerd. And, you know, I wore heavy glasses in those days, and I was a little tiny guy, and I was afraid of everything. I just scared stiff. And he got me by the hand one day and said, "Jim, I want you to come out for football." And I said, "No, I'm not going to go out for football. I'll get hurt. I'm afraid to. I don't want to." He said, "Come on out and try it, and if you don't like it after a couple of days, you can quit." But he said, "At least give it a try." So I did, and I found out I didn't get hurt, and it was kind of fun. And so I stayed there for the whole year, and it turned out that I had a certain talent for football. And when basketball season started right after that, he said, "I want you to come out for basketball." And I said, "Oh, no, I'm just a little short guy. I'm not big enough to play basketball." Same deal as football. Try it. If you don't like it, you can quit. And so I went out and I tried it, and that was a lot of fun. And when basketball was over, he said, "Now I want you to come out for boxing." And I said, "Now you've gone too far." He said, "Come on out and try it." I did. I didn't like it. I quit after the first guy hung one on my nose.
Eager to impart the same virtue of hard work that had been so important to Herb Keene, a rule was made. At the age of 14, each boy started work at the dealership.
10 cents an hour, sweeping the floor. And I wasn't worth it either. I guess I was in 6th, 7th, 8th grade, get me down there bright and early and sweep the floors. I broke my hand playing baseball one time, and I thought, well, I won't have to go to work now because I can't handle the damn broom. He said, you figure it out. The broom will be there. So I was there.
You know, we couldn't drive, and finally they taught us how to drive a car onto the grease rack because we both started on the grease rack. And then we ended up working in the body shop, sanding cars so they could paint them. Now, this was during the war years, and you fixed up anything that you could, and a paint job made it look a lot better. And so that's how we got started.
Dad decided that we should have a car. Now, I'm 2 years older than Duke. So he gave us a 1933 Plymouth that was probably destined for the junkyard. And he said, okay, guys, it's your car. Do whatever you want with it. Well, Duke was a very good mechanic. He really was. He overhauled the motor. I had a pretty good working relationship with the guy that painted cars, so I sanded the car and he painted it, and we painted it green and yellow, Packer colors. And it really was a sharp-looking car. We put squirrel tails on it. We had a hell of a time.
In 1945, everything changed. World War II ended. As the people of the nation turned their thoughts and eyes to the future, so did the brothers.
We both graduated from St. Mary's Grade School in De Pere, and we both graduated from East De Pere High School. I graduated in 47, Jim graduated in 45. I think I knew I was going in the car business about the time I entered college. Jim, I don't think did. Jim was going to be a doctor.
I graduated from high school on a Friday in 1945. And I was at Great Lakes on the following Monday in June of 1945. And they dropped the atomic bomb in August. And I stayed in service until the following September. And I got out of service and I went to St. Norbert College for 2 years, and then I went to Madison for 2 years. My first thought was, I think I'd like to probably be a doctor or maybe a sports writer. Those were my first two thoughts, but nothing ever really solid happened there. And I guess after my 2 years at St. Norbert, by the time I went to Madison, I knew what I was going to do.
Then when we got through with college, Dad put us in the office and he said, when you learn how to close the books, then you can get out of the office. And so we both spent our time in the office, so we knew the accounting, because that's where really you have to know what's going on in order to run a business.
He insisted that I know how to do every single job at the dealership. And I didn't have a problem with that until we got to where I had to go in the business office. And he said, you got to stay there until you can make the financial statement out 2 months in a row. It's not an easy task. In those days, it was all by hand, manual accounting. And I was never an office kind of guy. That wasn't in my personality. So I was cornered in this damn little cubicle, and I did it 1 month, and I said, now, he said that after I got through with that, I could start selling cars. I said, I just did it. Can I start? He said, 2 months. So I got it done the second month, and about the time I was ready to hand the second statement to my father, our business manager got sick, and he was out of work for 6 months. I had to stay in there another 6 months and run the damn thing. And if I hadn't liked our business manager too much, I'd have killed him. But that's the single best thing that he could have done for me, because I became very familiar with the accounting and where the money was supposed to come from, and sometimes where it didn't come from, and it was the best education I could have gotten. I wasn't happy getting it, but I was glad I had it.
The early 50s were the bachelor years for Jim and Duke. working hard and long at the dealership, playing hard and long at sports, and fun, and life. But within a few years, each would meet someone, and somehow life would get even better.
So we were hitting golf balls, and we walked into the bar after, and Jim and one of his friends were sitting there. And my friend was just darling. So the guy that he's with said, "I'll take the dark-haired one." And Jim said, "I'll take the one that's left." Now, he says he didn't say that. That's my version of the story.
I was dating a friend of Duke's, and we were in a bar, and that's when I met Duke. And maybe a week later, I happened to be back in this same bar, and he asked me out, and that's started from there.
I dated him a long time before as I say, the bells started to ring, and my mother would say, "Well, what is it that you don't like about him?" And I would say, "He's too darn nice." And the longer I dated him, I thought, what kind of fella do you want to spend the rest of your life with? I want somebody that's too darn nice. So that's when my bell started to ring. He proposed in February, and we were married in June. The spinster and the eligible bachelor.
I was 22, and I was working across the street from Broadway Garage. We went fishing, and back then is when I first started golfing and playing bridge. He liked all those things, so that was kind of a common denominator there. It was kind of fun working across the street, but I had to take a lot of teasing from all the employees because everybody knew we were dating. And we dated for about a year, and then he asked me to marry him. But we couldn't tell anybody at first because his mom and dad were gone on vacation. So I have this ring that I can't show my mom and dad or anyone. And it's like,
As the dealership grew, so did Jim and Duke's new families. Jim and Rosie brought 5 children into the world: Christine, Laurie, Casey, Catherine, and James. Duke and Joan did much the same thing. 3 girls, Barbara, Susan, and Patricia. Each arrived just 15 months apart. After a pause of 30 months, perhaps to catch their breath, 3 boys, Herbert Jr., David, and Michael, each another just 15 months apart. By 1967, business at Broadway Garage was booming. The downtown De Pere location was becoming so cramped for space, it was time to look forward once again.
We had to move. How we were able to do business in the facilities we had is a minor miracle, to do what we did. Looking back at it, I don't know how it was possible. Dad wanted to build a dealership in De Pere. He had strong ties to the city of De Pere. Duke and I wanted to move closer to where our customers were. Duke and I had run a survey, and we found, surprisingly, in East De Pere that the biggest customer base we had was in West Green Bay. So we wanted to move closer to where we saw the opportunities. So Ashwaubenon looked like the perfect place, and we found some land over there and ultimately bought it. Not my father's first wish, but he decided, I guess, that was a pretty good thing to do, and he, I think, thought, well, the boys are going to be running this a lot longer than I am. So that's where we moved.
After visiting the best of the new automotive facilities going up across the country, on 14 acres of land at the corner of Ashland Avenue and Hanson Road, Jim and Duke created the ultimate 1967 dealership.
Oh, it was gorgeous. It was gorgeous. We all had dreams of what we wanted, and the dealership actually came out better than I think we ever imagined it would. We had red carpet on the floor. We had all that grass out in front that didn't last long because business got too good and we had to take the grass up for parking area. But when we first went out there, it was magnificent. It was a showpiece. It really was. It was so big. We had so much land. I thought, my God, we could start a town here. Well, we outgrew that in a hell of a hurry.
The business grew quickly and quickly outgrew the new facility. More land was purchased, additions were constructed, and Broadway Chevy Olds was well on its way to becoming Brown County's largest car dealership.
It was fun. It was fun. We had such wonderful people to work with all the time, always. And I think part of it was because of our attitude that if you can't enjoy being here, if this isn't fun, then go someplace else. And we were able to have those kinds of people around us. Our sales meetings particularly, I'd have paid money to go to them. They were just a riot. It sure made life easy. And when you're having fun, generally, you do pretty well because you're happy. And I mean, it never got out of hand, but there's a time for levity and there's a time for seriousness. And our guys knew the difference. But I think if people want to be there, that transmits to your customers too. And they see that this is a good place.
My father, my brother, and myself all felt that it was a family business. All our employees were part of the family, and you tried to make everybody happy. And if your technicians, if your salespeople, if everybody was happy, they could promote your dealership much better, and you could sell more cars. And you tried to take care of everybody the way you wanted to be taken care of yourself, which is an old cliche, but we did practice it. We tried to make everybody happy. If they had a complaint, we tried to solve them, and I think we solved most of them, if not all of them. Sometimes we gave more than what we should, but if it made somebody happy, we figured, well, we'll sell them another car and that will probably make it up. If you didn't keep them happy, then they wouldn't buy another car from you, so look at what you lost.
Duke was our ace in the hole whenever anything relative to property, real estate, any fixed assets. I had no knowledge of that stuff, and I could never acquire it as hard as I tried. And I'd say, Duke, what is this? He'd look at a blueprint, he'd say, here, and I said, that doesn't mean anything to me. He understood that stuff. I don't know how, because he never had any training for it, but he knew that. He was, as I mentioned earlier, he was a good mechanic. Duke knew equipment and stuff like that I had no knowledge of. And I just would never worry about it. When we built that facility, I'd go out there once every 2 or 3 weeks to see what was going on. Duke was out there every day, making sure that things were going well.
We worked together very well. He would take some things that he was better at, and I would do some things that I was better at. But we never did say, you do this and I'll do that, but we would just by ourselves decide, okay, I'll take care of this and Jim can take care of that, or the other way around, and we got along fine. And we tried to work on each other's strong points. If he was stronger, and like Jim was stronger with figures than I was, and I was a little stronger on building than he was, so that's what we did.
He was a hell of a partner, hell of a partner. We've never ever had a disagreement that we couldn't resolve in a matter of minutes. And those disagreements never were public disagreements. And they were never major disagreements either. I mean, the big things were easy to agree on. It was, should we paint the floor green or should we paint it blue, whatever, that sort of stuff. It just was such a smooth thing. Duke and I just did things automatically. I wouldn't even have to say anything to Duke. He wouldn't have to say anything to me. It got done. We knew what each of us had to do, and it got done. And in total harmony.
Friends, partners, brothers. Now in their 70s, the Keens have passed the reins of the dealership on to their sons. Both enjoying an active and well-deserved retirement, each keeps an office at the dealership to keep up with old friends and each other. Duke Keene, the man.
Duke is a very kind, giving, loving person. Loves his family and his friends. I think he'd do almost anything for a friend. I mean, he and I are pretty bosom buddies because we spend a lot of time together as couples and just alone. I feel more in love with him than when we first met. We have a lot more in common even today. We've done a lot more things together through the years, and he really understands me a lot better.
Jim Keene, the man.
Lined with gold. And I don't mean materially. Sterling character, sterling qualities. A man I was always proud to walk in any place with him or walk down the street, or any time he stood to say something, I was proud. A couple times in his younger years, I had to straighten him out a little bit. But he came out of it just fine.
Jim Keene and Duke Keene, brothers.
I'm extremely happy with the way things turned out. I don't think I could write a better script than what has turned out. I don't know how it could have turned out much better. You can always go back and say, I wish I had done this. Maybe I wish I had bought this particular stock or whatever, but you couldn't ask for a better result. I am extremely happy with our life.
Great life. Absolutely. I can't think of anyone that I would trade places with. I'm absolutely in love with my family. I'm in love with Duke's family. We're very close, and that's very important. We have some wonderful friends that we thoroughly enjoy. And my wife lets me do pretty much whatever I want as long as the leash doesn't get too long. So, between family and friends and relatives and a good life, a very, very enjoyable career. What else is there? Not much. I can't think. If I had $1 million, I can't think of anything that I would need or want that I don't have. I'm a very content man. Give me a pair of slippers and a pipe and put me off in the corner. It makes a life rich. I hate the term rich, but boy, I love it with family.